An Airbus A320 roars down runway 4 at New York's LaGuardia Airport. Just moments after liftoff, the routine flight turns into a crisis. The aircraft strikes a massive flock of birds, Canada geese, at low altitude. Within seconds, both engines ingest multiple birds and lose thrust. The plane is now powerless, and the pilots have mere minutes to act. What follows is one of the most extraordinary emergency landings in aviation history. This is the story of U.S. Airways Flight 1549, better known as the Miracle on the Hudson. How did the pilots manage to land a powerless plane on a frigid river and save everyone on board? We take you behind the scenes of one of the most extraordinary moments in aviation history. It's January 15, 2009. On board are 150 passengers and 5 crew members. The aircraft? An Airbus A320 powered by 2 CFM56 engines. In command was Captain Chesley Sullenberger, a former Air Force pilot with years of commercial flying under his belt. At his side was First Officer Skiles, also highly experienced. This particular flight was the final leg of a 4-day trip for the crew. They were heading home. This was the aircraft's second flight of the day, and since it was short, the cockpit voice recorder captured everything, from pre-flight checks to the final moments. The crew sounded calm and lighthearted, unaware of what lay ahead. Minor issues popped up like a radio button glitch and a load sheet discrepancy, but both were routine. Skiles was flying, Sullenberger was monitoring. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. Before we dive into the events of the flight itself, there are a couple of important details you need to know, both of which played a crucial role in how the situation unfolded. First Officer Skiles had over 15,000 flight hours and experience with aircraft like the Fokker 1, Boeing 737. However, he was new to the Airbus A320, having only completed his type rating and final check ride 16 days before the incident, logging about 37 hours on the A320 at the time of the accident. The second point is about the aircraft. Not all U.S. Airways Airbus A320s were equipped for extended overwater operations. Some had additional safety features, like life vests for every passenger, and inflatable evacuation slides that doubled as life rafts, installed at both the forward and rear emergency exits. As luck would have it, on this particular day, the aircraft assigned to Flight 1549, though not scheduled to fly over any large body of water, was one of the overwater-equipped jets, a seemingly small detail that would prove to be a critical advantage later on. At 15:24 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Cactus 1549 received takeoff clearance from runway 4 at LaGuardia Airport. Everything looked routine as the aircraft accelerated down the runway. First Officer Skiles was flying this leg, and he performed a standard takeoff. At around 700 feet, they were handed off from LaGuardia's tower to New York Departure Control. Captain Sullenberger checked in, reporting their altitude as 700 feet and climbing to 5,000. The controller responded with clearance to climb further, up to 15,000 feet, which Sully acknowledged. Just 2 minutes into the flight, things took a dramatic turn. On the cockpit voice recorder, you can hear Captain Sully suddenly shout, "Birds!" followed almost instantly by a series of dull thuds and the unmistakable sound of both engines losing power. At that moment, the aircraft was at 2,815 feet, roughly 4.5 nautical miles northeast of LaGuardia. The aircraft had just flown directly into a flock of migratory Canada geese. Canada geese are large birds, weighing up to 8 pounds, nearly 3 times heavier than the 2 to 2.5 pound birds used in Airbus A320 engine certification tests. Post-accident investigations revealed at least 2 geese were ingested into each engine. One was expelled, while the other caused severe internal damage, leading to both engines flaming out. The pilots were unaware of the damage, only noticing the rapid loss of thrust. Right after the bird strike, the cockpit voice recorder, CBR, picks up First Officer Skiles saying, "Uh-oh," followed by Captain Sully calmly stating, "We We have both engines are rolling back. This moment is critical. The faster you recognize what's happening, the faster you can begin responding. And in this case, both pilots realized the severity of the situation within seconds. In an aircraft like the Airbus A320, losing both engines during climb-out feels like hitting an invisible wall. The aircraft suddenly loses forward momentum, and the situation becomes immediately apparent. What Captain Sully did next is nothing short of remarkable. Just 2 seconds later, he says, "I'm starting the APU and I have controls." Now, it's standard procedure at US Airways for the captain to take control in emergencies like this, allowing the first officer to become the pilot monitoring and handling checklists. But what stands out is Sully's decision to start the APU, Auxiliary Power Unit, and he did it purely from instinct and experience. This action wasn't part of any memory item, nor was it listed in the Quick Reference Handbook, QRH, for this type of emergency. He simply knew that starting the APU immediately was crucial to restore electrical power and hydraulic systems, especially since they were so close to the ground and had very little time. And he was right. This early decision would play a vital role in how the rest of the flight unfolded. Just 10 seconds later, Sully, now the pilot flying, asked Skiles to start the QRH checklists and issued a Mayday call, declaring a dual engine failure and intent to return to LaGuardia. The Mayday call wasn't heard due to another aircraft transmitting. In just 12 seconds, the crew demonstrated exceptional situational awareness, with Skiles quickly diving into the checklist. Skiles' recent Airbus A320 training proved invaluable, allowing him to quickly action the correct emergency procedures despite the high-stress situation. After the bird strike, Captain Sully and First Officer Skiles were still heading away from LaGuardia. Investigation revealed that if they had immediately turned back, they might have landed on runway 13. However, pilots are trained to avoid hasty reactions in emergencies, focusing on aircraft control and problem assessment. Sully and Skiles did exactly that. Their quick, composed actions, starting the APU, working through the checklist, and issuing a Mayday within 20 seconds, showed remarkable skill and situational awareness. Despite their quick actions, Sully and Skiles' options were dwindling. The further they flew without engines, the harder it became to return to LaGuardia. Sully, managing the radio, communicated with air traffic control, aware that time was running out. ATC offered landing options, but Sully knew the aircraft had only reached 3,000 feet before descending and was closely monitoring speed. The situation was critical, and every decision carried high stakes. What's crucial here is that they were flying over one of the most densely populated areas in the world, New York City. Sully knows that if he turns back toward LaGuardia, he'll not only lose altitude faster, but he will also be flying directly over Manhattan, a scenario he absolutely wants to avoid. This is a key principle in flight training. Without engines, any turn made in a glide will result in greater altitude loss than flying straight ahead. Sully realizes that a turn to LaGuardia would likely put him out of options, forcing him to land short of the runway, possibly in a densely populated area. The decision to land in such an area could have devastating consequences. As Sully assesses options, he sees Teterboro Airport 9 miles away, but it's too far. Then he spots the Hudson River, the only viable landing spot. As they descend, Sully flies while Skiles works the checklist, which wasn't meant for engine failure right after takeoff. It suggests speeding to 300 knots to restart engines, but they don't have that speed. Realizing this, they rely on instincts, adapting quickly, hoping to restart an engine and find a way to land safely. At 15:29, just about 2 minutes after the engine failure, Captain Sully makes a crucial call over the PA system.
"This is the captain. Brace for impact."
This moment is pivotal because, up until this point, there has been no communication with the cabin crew about the severity of the situation. The cabin crew would have noticed that something was wrong. Likely the plane had grown eerily quiet, but they wouldn't have known just how little time was left. By announcing brace for impact, Sully signals the crew that a crash landing is imminent, prompting them to prepare passengers for an emergency. Meanwhile, Sully focuses on controlling the descent, but notices the aircraft's speed deteriorating. He believed he was maintaining the safe green dot speed, but the speed continued to drop. Sully only reduced to F speed once the flaps were extended, and throughout the descent, the aircraft kept losing speed. Meanwhile, the crew was receiving a series of warnings. As they descended over central New York, they were confronted with multiple alarms, including TCAS, Traffic Collision Avoidance System, warnings due to nearby helicopters. More importantly, they were also getting Ground Proximity Warning System, GPWS, alerts. The GPWS warnings are crucial because they indicate that the aircraft is approaching the ground too quickly, potentially leading to a collision. Sully and Skiles were following the dual engineer failure checklist, not the ditching checklist, which advises turning off GPWS alerts. As a result, the GPWS kept sounding terrain, terrain, pull up, drowning out other alerts like speed, speed, speed. The A320's warning system prioritizes GPWS due to its urgency, muting less critical warnings. This meant Sully couldn't hear speed alerts, even as the aircraft continued slowing down, dangerously close to the water. Approximately 2.5 minutes after the initial engine failure, First Officer Jeff Skiles realizes that he is unable to restart the engines. He continues to follow the checklist and manipulate the switches, but he signals to Captain Sully that nothing seems to be working. Just 20 seconds later, Sully asks,
"Give me flaps?"
30 seconds after that, Jeff reports, "Okay, you have flaps," and provides a speed readout. "You have 170 knots, you're at 250 feet, have you got any power?" This indicates that Jeff is trying to apply thrust to see if any engines respond, though it's clear that there's no power coming from them. At this point, Jeff asks, "You have flaps too, do you want more?" Sully responds, "No, we'll stay with flaps too." There was discussion during the subsequent investigation about whether this was the right choice. Sully explained that, based on his experience, using flaps 3 would only increase drag, and flaps 2 would provide a better nose attitude when they hit the water. The investigation committee also agreed that this was the best call. As they near the water, Sully prepares to flare, but their speed is dangerously low, 15 to 90 knots below the safe limit. This increases the risk of a stall. Turning on the APU is critical. Without it, they'd rely on the ram air turbine, losing stall protection under alternate law. Sully asks Skiles,
"Any ideas?"
and Skiles replies, "No, not really," showing strong crew coordination. Sully begins the flare, but due to low speed, the aircraft doesn't respond fully, despite pulling the stick back. Despite Sully's efforts, the aircraft still crashes into the water with considerable force. The last thing heard on the cockpit voice recorder, CVR, is Sully saying,
"Okay, let's brace."
The plane hits the water with a force that exceeds the certified landing and water limits. As a result, significant damage occurs to the aft part of the aircraft, which strikes the water first. The left engine is torn off, but despite this, the plane continues to decelerate as it settles into the water. Due to damage to the rear of the aircraft, water begins to flood in, causing the plane to sink. Despite this, the A320 is designed to stay afloat long enough for passengers to evacuate. The cabin crew directs passengers from the sinking rear to overwing and forward exits. Evacuation from the wings is slower than usual as passengers crowd on them. Some from the aft section reach forward exits and board life rafts. Thankfully, there's enough space for all passengers and crew, leading to iconic photos of the evacuation. Air traffic control also performs exceptionally well, coordinating with the Port Authority of New York to dispatch boats to the scene. Within minutes, boats arrive to pick up the passengers. Given the freezing temperatures and the fact that many passengers are wet, the proximity to these ferries likely prevented fatalities. Miraculously, the flight crew remains unharmed. After the plane has settled in the water, Sully and Jeff return to the cabin to conduct a sweep, ensuring all crew and passengers are evacuated before exiting themselves through the forward emergency exits.